Welcome to the Insight Edit. Today we're going to dive into give your agency more freedom. Pretty controversial subject probably for clients to think they should give their agency more freedom.
Yeah, I guess the question is, what does freedom look like? Freedom! Like, what does freedom look like? Can there be too much freedom? Is there not enough freedom? Because I think that's what we're going to cover
Yeah,
in
that's
today's
exactly
episode.
what we're going to cover. What does creative freedom mean? So should we tackle that one first?
Yeah, go for it.
Well, I thought you were going to go for it.
I don't know what to say. No, I'm joking.
Creative freedom, look, creative freedom for within the context of a client brief. Creative freedom is about working with your agency to maybe come up with some ideas that we hadn't thought before, or looking at something from a slightly different perspective.
Yeah.
But I guess in some respects, it's kind of coming out the constraints of we need a talking head,
Yes.
we need a day of the life of video, we need a HR video, which is lots of talking heads to get more employees into the business or aware of the business. So I think creative freedom really is to try and look at a brief with a client and say, can we just explore something perhaps you'd never thought of before?
Yeah.
And trusting your agency to do that.
I think creative freedom is important to have. How much of it? Questionable.
Yeah.
But I think everyone wants a bit of creative freedom in a project. And, you know, we have that in our own personal lives as well.
We do,
You know,
yeah.
and you feel something more connected to what you're doing, I think, when you have the option to be that little bit more creatively free. And I know in our case, that first chance we get to be creative and not be sort of too constrained by
Yeah.
it is in that proposal writing, those early stages when you're sort of thinking of concepts and what something could look like. And
But do you think even then that does that give us creative freedom, or do we, as agencies, always have in the back of our minds, is that in the context of what the client's thinking
will
of?
they like it?
Will they like it?
Well-
do they have the budget to make this kind of stuff? I feel that sometimes, I'm sure all agencies come across this, is you come up with this kind of amazing idea, okay, and not the nervousness to put it across, because we don't get nervous. Let's be fair, to put our ideas across to clients, but it's the client understanding the reason why we are trying to be creatively free within something, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose in our case, and you are good at pushing this, because sometimes I do sit there and I think I'm probably more the nervous one, because I'm probably the one that sits there and like, they're not going to go for that, they're not doing that. But what you do, and we need to try doing more of, and it does at times work, is when you're giving those creative options early on, is giving those, the handful that are very much in their world could work. Maybe it's more of a
Yeah.
styling thing. One's live action option, one's animation. But then giving them the additional option of doing something that's maybe not what they're used to doing.
Slightly outside their comfort zone.
Yeah, because that gives them the full spectrum then of what is possible. They've got things that will feel comfortable to them and things maybe they've done in the past, just more elevated.
Yeah.
And then they have got something that challenges them a little bit further. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And
Yeah,
that's
sometimes
absolutely
it doesn't
fine.
work.
That's the whole point of
Yeah.
being creative, is that creativity is obviously objective.
Yeah.
People feel very different about all different things.
Absolutely. I mean, I love it. I love it when we come up with ideas. Well, sometimes not even when we come up with ideas, but you see other agencies work and you go, how did they sell that in? Like, that must have been a really, and we all know these brands, on the big high street brands, if you like, and you go, how did their agency sell that idea in to a client that on the face of it is very conservative, and they've come out with this incredible idea, and yet the agency's got the client's gone with it, and actually it's been hugely successful for them. And of course, there is always that thing, isn't there, where you push the brief and push the brief and push the brief, and it works on that occasion, and then the client thinks, okay, let's do this again.
Yeah.
And then the nervousness comes in again, doesn't it?
Do you know what I think that is? When you see those kind of creatives, is I think the expectations from the start of the project were very, very clear.
Yes.
So everyone was on the same page
Yeah.
and understood the vision, even if they needed hand-holding throughout that process and it was a little bit nerve-wracking to them, they still understood why we're pushing it in
Yes.
this direction. And the objectives, you know, even if we are going to push it that bit further, what do we still need to make sure it's doing at the end of it? And
Because it does have to, like all of these, you know, yes, we're talking about creative freedom here, but it has to be within the context of the brief, right? It absolutely, it has to
absolutely.
stay within the context of the brief. It can't just be some random idea that you come up with.
And also, there's a reason you've chosen this specific agency to take on that creative, whether it's because they came up with it, whether it's because they've got experience or evidence that they can do this and they've got the proof and data that says, look,
Yeah.
this kind of stuff does work, pushing it that bit further, doing this kind of angle on something, having trust, having that collaboration, that communication is what I think allows you to expand that creativity.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um,
And do you think, I don't even think some of that comes with time with being with a
No.
client, because, you know, there are Uncommon, an incredible agency. You know, they are, you would go to them for very, very bold ideas. You know, they're not going to come up with a, you know, they'll come up with a talking head, but it'll be something completely bold and probably slightly out there. But you're going to that agency for a reason. I think sometimes, you know, agency like ours, and there are many agencies like ours out there. It's giving those agencies a chance to have more creative freedom within the scope of a brief.
Yeah, and I think also it's important to make it clear that when we're talking about pushing creatives, it doesn't mean doing something wacky.
No.
It could just be as simple as doing something they've never really done before.
Yeah.
So, you know, it might be that an agency has always done talking heads to talk about their culture, and it's us that said, well, why don't you do it more of a day in the life?
Yeah.
Maybe they've never entertained the idea because they've never thought of how that comes about. And don't get me wrong, it's not groundbreaking, but it's something they've never done before. It's
Yeah.
an angle that they've never focused on. And I know that over the past sort of 2 years, the day in the life kind of aesthetic has become very, very popular
It has,
in
yeah.
the corporate world and also just that influencer world, you know, follow me around. So
Yeah.
it's so big right now, and it's not changing anything. Like, it is just, it's quite an everyday concept now. But if you've never done it before and you've got someone pushing you to do that, that in itself can feel very fresh
Yeah,
and bring a lot.
Probably doesn't even have to be quite. I mean, a day in life isn't a big thing, but maybe it's simply we like the talking head in a different way.
Yeah.
We get them to stand slightly differently. We get them to feel more relaxed on camera.
Shoot it in a maybe more of an odder setting than you would have expected.
Exactly. Maybe the way that instead of looking across the camera, which is the classic talking head, you get them to look off camera.
Yeah.
Or you make it feel more chatty. You know, all these things is taking something that is, I guess, become a little bit formulaic, right? A talking head has become very formulaic, hasn't it? It's taking that formula and saying, do you know what, let's just mix this formula up a little bit. And that in itself is creative freedom. You know, like you say, Con, it doesn't need to be a big thing necessarily. So, Connor, we've talked about creative freedom for agencies. What does creative freedom really mean to a client, though? Because I think if I was a client, perhaps I might get a little bit nervous, whereas I would say that for a client, what it allows us to do is come up with fresh ideas for
Yeah.
the client, produce fresh ideas. Could be making the content more memorable because they haven't really gone with that idea before,
Yeah.
you know, that we come up with.
It could even just be as simple as just finding that new aesthetic that they're
Yes.
after. It
Yeah,
might be
yeah.
that they're just looking for that revamp, that change in direction.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
maybe they're just realizing that what they're doing isn't quite landing or working,
Yeah.
and we need to do something different.
Yeah.
We need to do something. It's not even about being bigger.
No.
It's just about doing something that you're doing already and just differently.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be bigger to do that. Like
think-
you say, it could be the small things.
Yeah, and I think also it can unlock kind of creative narratives, which ultimately might bring more ROI on
Yeah.
a product if they're selling or something like that, which they wouldn't necessarily think about themselves. So I think that's really why giving the agencies more creative freedom almost unlocks creative freedom in the client as well.
Yeah, and I think when we are talking about pushing things, and I really do mean like pushing things now, not just the small
Yeah.
little changes, I think we say it all the time, just that communication is so important, because if you still aren't really getting something, ask the questions. Even if you're asking still further down the line, just keep asking. And it can be a tricky thing because, with all due respect, you're not the creative. That's why you've reached out to the agency to help bring these ideas
Yeah.
to life. So when we sit there and we think, oh my God, we could do this, we could do that, and they're like, I still don't understand what that looks like. Sometimes it's just giving them the confidence that we know something like this
Yeah.
will work, and then getting to that next stage of maybe just showing loose early concepts where they can actually now visualize,
it,
because
yeah.
it's a lot to just describe a concept, and then it's another thing to actually start seeing something and make more
Yeah.
sense of it.
There's a big trust piece in there, isn't
Yeah,
there?
and that's why sometimes early, and even sometimes in those pitching stages, things like mood boards work really well to help visualize what
Yeah,
something's
definitely.
trying to convey.
And references from other things as
Yeah.
well. You know, that doesn't necessarily mean to other films. It could be artwork, it
Mm-hmm.
could be illustration, it could be design. You know,
Mm.
there are lots of different places where we can draw inspiration from different creative platforms or magazines.
Yeah.
And it's those things, like you said, it just kind of brings what we're trying to get across to a client, really brings it to life for them.
Yeah, and I think that's where early stage meetings like discovery sessions are really important, because it gives us a chance to understand the brand and what they've been doing in the past and what they like
Yeah.
and what they don't like, what they want to see, what they don't want to see, and so on and so on,
Yeah.
which allows us to tap into those creative elements and know that we can't show certain things. That's why those discovery sessions,
Yeah.
we need them. They're
I
just
think it's-
vital.
I think it's important to say, though, that it's never about the agency. It's never, ever about the agency. It's always about giving the client, pushing that creative, giving the creative freedom to really push the proposal a little bit further, push the brief a little bit further, but ensuring that it's about the client.
So I'm going to actually hold you against something there.
Okay.
Because you said it's never about the agency. What do you mean?
Because we are creatives and we work across multiple briefs, we get to see a whole expanse of creativity, don't we? Right? So I think sometimes what we want to do as creatives is, you know, take something we've seen which we think is amazing and somehow apply that, almost force it onto a client brief.
Yeah. Because
That's what I mean by that.
okay, because I'm going to talk about a pet peeve here.
Okay.
And I feel like you might agree and maybe
Yeah.
disagree, and that's fine. But my pet peeve with creative freedom,
Yeah.
and don't get me wrong, this is all going to stay very positive, but the one thing I'm a worst case scenario I'm a worst case scenario person, so I'll always jump to that first. And when someone says
noticed
to
that.
me, yeah, I know it's a running theme. When someone says to me, "Oh, you're the creatives, you just, do what you want," or "I don't know, you just do it." When I hear that word, it does make me
Shiver.
because some clients will use that as a way of just seeing what you'll do and all along have known what they want to be seeing and hold that information purposefully. And I can understand why, but I think what that can have is a lot of repercussions a bit later, because if you've got 5 days budget to be doing something, or there's a certain amount of time to be doing something, and you said, look, just do what you think looks best, whack together this edit for us, you know what looks right, and we've done something and we share something, and you keep playing with us for a bit, and then you go, look, let's just take it back, let's do X, Y, Z, and you've known you wanted to be doing that all along. What are we doing now? Because we've lost time,
Yeah.
we've gone back to square one, and what are we doing about budget? Because we've also got to go back to the drawing board again. So giving that creative freedom knowingly when you know you want to be doing something exact worries me sometimes.
Yeah, I think it worries me sometimes as well. But I think that question around, you deal with it because you're the creative. Everyone's creative. Like I wasn't born a creative. Everyone has creative elements in them, right? Every single one. To go, you're a creative, to you, to me, to Louise, whoever, I think is almost like saying, I don't trust myself, and therefore I want you to go away and show me something amazing, even though I know exactly what I want, isn't it? So, and it's a bit of a pet peeve of mine as well, Connor, okay? I mean, the one thing I would say about that is we are experienced enough now in the game of what we do to go, we know we want to hear your thoughts.
Exactly. I was about to say, whenever someone would say something like that to me, I will take it in baby steps.
Yeah.
You know, if you've said, here's
We
a
don't rush
bunch of
ahead.
stuff, just make something for us. I trust you to do it. Even if I've got good relationship with that person, I will still show you a very, 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 very early cut
Yeah.
to even just check this is what you're even thinking you wanted. Because, and sometimes you can just tell when they know.
Yes.
They're just trying to see what you'll come up with. But it's just understanding that playing that game too long, when maybe there's a very short turnaround, you lose time,
yeah.
and then the stress comes in, and
Yeah.
the panic comes in, and your boss is on top of you are going, where's this edit? I haven't seen it. And it's
We've
like,
got this event in 2 days.
I've wasted time just playing creative, which again is why I think the communication very early on, understanding those boundaries between timings, deadlines, milestones, whatever, is important to understand how much time we can be playing around with creators before we are like, we need to lock off something by this date, otherwise it's not happening.
But you'd like to think is that, like you said, those baby steps kind of lock that stuff down
They do.
very, very quickly,
They
doesn't
do,
it?
yeah.
Yeah, really, really quickly. So you're then not losing the budget and the time and
No.
the stresses that all that involves.
Yeah.
Locking it down early is definitely the right way to go.
But it is, I counterbalance it because it is fun to be creative. Like, no one wants to just be sat at their desks doing the same thing day in, day out.
definitely not.
Like, it's fun when something comes about and wants to be a little bit different, and we invite that if we can.
Yeah. Well, that's why I love. I mean, genuinely, that's why I say it a lot, don't I? But that's why I am so passionate about what we do because, we get to work on across so many industries, so many different briefs, so many client projects, client personalities, right? So we have a whole raft of things that we do, and we draw inspiration from all of that. And then we get to make, frankly, amazing films. I've always think, someone is trusting us enough to create some incredible things for them. And incredible means different things to different people, right?
Yeah.
Without a shadow of a doubt. And some of the projects are very formulaic, and there's nothing wrong with that. And then other projects are perhaps a bit more inspirational that we work on. When we talk about creative freedom, Connor, I think one of the things to talk about here is to really, right at the very, very beginning, to invite collaboration. Do those workshops, do the pre-production brainstorming, give alternatives instead of just raising problems. I think that's super, super important. And you want to give that sense with a client, I think, about that shared responsibility for it. Everyone believing in whatever the creative might be that we end up doing, but kind of creatively sharing the experience with the client, because I think that is quite a strong, powerful thing to do without any project.
What I would say to agencies and to clients is when you're in that proposal phase and you have that proposal ready, try to put yourself in a position where you can actually talk them through it, not just send, because one, you'll be able to show the passion behind it, but two, it opens up very, very early that communication. If you're not quite understanding something or visualizing something, instantly you've got the questions to ask and the answers to give, because just receiving a piece of paper and understanding a creative doesn't work. And that goes out to all agencies, which I'd like to think agencies are doing that as much as they can anyway.
But also to clients,
I want you to present this to me.
Exactly.
Like, it doesn't have to be in person, best if it can be, but if it can't, it's fine. It's not always possible.
Over Zoom or
but even if it's over Zoom, Teams, whatever, I always like, and I know you do as well, I like the opportunity to be able to sell this idea even further than just the words and images and links and references I put onto paper. I just feel like you can also just see instantly the passion we've got, and the passion that they've got.
But that also goes down to the brief, right? So we receive a brief. It's like, can we have a call, please? Because we want to hear what you've got to say. Because you know as well as I do, and we've been on so many calls like this, Connor, where the brief says one thing, we start finding out what's behind the brief by the questions that we ask, and suddenly it unlocks a whole world of new information
Yeah.
that
And new creatives that
yeah
can completely
that
take
might have taken
form.
us like 2 or 3 weeks to get, but just because we're relying on a piece of paper, because we've actually spoken to the person or the people that are putting the brief over for for the client, it just unlocks so much more information.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, you can then show the passion and then kind of get them passionate about it as well.
Yeah. I've actually got something else to tackle, and feel free to shut me down if you
Okay.
don't want to talk about this. But I actually think also there's a part of creative freedom where we, as the agency you brought in, I'm not saying have the authority, but sometimes we have, again, not the right, but sometimes we need to say, no, we need to do it this way. And what I mean by that is, as an example of a film we made this summer, I won't drop which one, but Harry was working on something. We got a couple of versions in.
Yes,
Clients
yeah,
wanted
yeah,
to change a slight creative direction. And Harry was like, we can't do that.
Yeah.
It's not because we can't do that. But if we do that, you lose all of this because of it. You lose that tone of voice, you lose that storytelling approach. And he was like, give me a couple more versions and I think you'll see it then.
Yeah. And that wasn't arrogance.
It
That
wasn't
wasn't
arrogant,
arrogance.
but it
What
was
that was-
knowing the repercussions
Yeah.
of sort of changing something. And Harry could fully see where it needed to get to. And after a couple of edits in, I think it's Harry and Ryan actually, but after a couple of edits in, then the client was like, I'm
I
so
get
glad
it.
we didn't change it. This makes so much sense. I just needed to skip a few
Yeah.
stages until I saw the color grade on it and I saw this and that, and now it makes sense to me now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
And I think
And it was a great film at the end of it.
brilliant film. Yeah, going back to what you were saying around it has to be done this way, because when those kind of projects come up, through our experience, collective experience with us and the team, and and other agencies as well, is that we do understand what works and what doesn't work. And I'm not suggesting clients don't, because clients have way loads and loads of education now around making films, and but ultimately, as a creative agency, we're doing this every single day. It's our lifeblood, right? So in some respects, we give ourselves permission to say, actually, we do need to do it this way.
And like you say, it's not about telling anyone off or
No,
being
no.
awkward about it,
No.
but it's just maybe there's just this little insight or this next step that we just know is going to tip it in a slightly different direction. We just need to get to that
Yeah.
stage for you to fully see something or make sense of
Yeah.
something.
Passion, belief, and expertise.
There we go.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think in relation to the example that I just gave as well about the sort of needing to see something, take place to fully understand
Yeah.
it is something the client should just consider is just to trust that creative process, not just to expect it to just make
Yep.
sense.
Yeah,
there and
yeah,
then.
absolutely.
It takes a bit of time. It takes a bit of understanding, learning, persuasion, whatever it might be, but just trust.
Yeah.
Trust that process, especially if you are going to go into it with a bit of freedom and it's not, this is our brand, this is how it looks, we've done this before, we just need you to do it.
Yeah.
If it is opening those doors to, we want to try something different, we want to do this or we want to do that, then just trust the process because it's going to be different to whatever you've done before.
Yeah.
And not in a massively difficult way, it's just there might be a different step involved in the
Yeah.
process.
Absolutely. I think also, and look, this comes going, right at the very, very start of the process, having those conversations around share honest feedback. Don't micromanage, just share that honest feedback, because I think that's also really important. And it makes the trust part develop and become stronger.
I think also allowing the space to trial and error comes with being creative and being,
definitely.
especially when you're talking about the freedom to just test things out. And that works both internally within our own business, with each other and seeing what we're doing for each other's clients, but also just the client as well is just, allowing those tests to take place and giving that feedback. I know there was a time when I think one of the guys made sort of a contraption for shooting something for Popeyes. And I was that just looks ridiculous. That's not going to work. But Harry knew how this what it would actually look like as a result, and it turned
was
out
brilliant.
great. But it really was just a pile of wooden planks, sort of all
Yeah.
screwed together, and it was a whole mechanism. But
Yeah.
I needed to just trust that he knew what he was doing, and at the end of it, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
Had a client seen that, I'd probably been like, "What is that? I don't know if this is for real."
But taking that as an example, though, that is about trust.
Yeah,
That is about, we've been working with for a long time, and, the creative director trusts us, because we've delivered time and time and time again, and we're collaborative.
but also Harry
But
was
they're-
like, he knew this was going
Yes,
to work.
he
He
did.
went in with it with
Experience.
confidence, and he was also, again, trialing and erroring it
Yeah.
before it even went to the shoot.
Yeah, but the trial and error thing, I think we do that a fair amount across the year, don't we? If I think of the TV advert we made
Yeah,
recently, how much trial and error going on the actual shoot were we filming stuff with iPhones?
yeah,
Looking at the toys and seeing how they would move. Does the movement of the toy dropping in work with the movement of the graphics that come before?
yeah.
So we do a lot of trial and error, and innovative. I'm always a bit careful about using the word innovative because it can mean so many things to so many people. But I would say, we always try to be a little bit more innovative on every shoot that we do. To round out this podcast, let's think about maybe a few top tips that client need to remember. Trust your agency.
Yeah, trust the agency, trust the process, ask questions
Yeah.
if you're not understanding something or can't quite
Yeah.
make sense.
Give feedback early.
Get feedback early, and make sure the approvals are in place where they need to be. Because
Yeah.
at some point, when you're being creative and being free with that creative, we do need to lock things off as we go, though, at the same time.
Absolutely. And what about the last one? What do you think the last one should be?
Have fun.
Oh my God, yeah, absolutely brilliant
Like-
one. Enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like,
You reaching out to an agency and wanting to make a video shouldn't be an unenjoyable thing.
No, it
like
should
it
always
should
be
be.
enjoyable.
And there's been agencies that I spoke to before who've said like, "Look, I've had to change agency because of X, Y, Z," and that should never be the case.
Ever.
I would personally, and God forbid it's happened, but I would hate to hear someone's left because they're like, "I just didn't enjoy making that with them." Like the whole point of this
I'd be
should be
mortified
fun.
by
I'd be
that.
so upset, but the whole point of this is to be fun.
Yeah.
And yes, there will be stressful elements.
Of course
It's just
there will.
life. There's nothing we can do
Yeah.
about that. But have fun. This whole process should be fun, especially if you've never done it before. It'll open a whole world of things you never thought about when it comes to
Yeah.
video. So have fun and be creative with it.
and I think, Connor, that's a brilliant way to end this podcast.
Well, thank you so much for watching today's episode. I hope you enjoyed. I hope there was something you could take away from this, and hopefully you look forward to be creative with your
Yeah.
next project.
Get in touch with us.
Yeah, if you've got any questions at all, drop us a comment, follow us on LinkedIn, YouTube, wherever you may be watching or listening.
And if you've got anything you want us to tackle, please drop that comment in the on LinkedIn or email us at hello@nrg-studios.com, and we'll make it part of our next podcast.